From our studios in Scottsdale, Arizona, welcome to Retirement News Online. So the risks that you face in retirement are very different from those during your working years. Market downturns, inflation, healthcare costs, even living too long, which sounds good, can derail an otherwise solid plan because we're going to pay for all those extra years. And risk management is about protecting your lifestyle and peace of mind while still allowing your money to work for you. To talk about this is my guest, Troy Tremblay with Tremblay Financial Services in Nashville, Tennessee. Troy, I've missed you since our last meeting. I want to talk about, again, protection in a portfolio. When we talk about market downturns, that's what they do, right? They're up and down, and it doesn't matter when you're younger, right? As you get older, though, we have to at least look at protection, but still get some kind of growth. How do you do all that?
So, really it starts with a financial consultation with each individual client, because every client is different. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, different ages have a factor into it, but also risk tolerance. If someone sees the stock market, decline 4 or 5% in a single week, are they going to lose sleep over that? Mm-hmm. That's a concern that we want to address and look at. And again, everyone has a different type of personality, mm-hmm. and that part of their profile can have an effect on what types of investments we decide to go work with. But if we specifically want to address risk, and not just stock market risk, but also inflation risk and interest rate risk, liquidity risk, other risks associated, one investment that can make a lot of sense is a fixed indexed annuity. And it's one of the only investments that you can say is guaranteed. Your principal is guaranteed. And not many other investments you can say that with. Something that's FDIC insured, or maybe a U.S. Treasury bill. Those are the only other exceptions that you can say are guaranteed. And so people like knowing that they have stock market participation if the market does well, but they also know that their principal is guaranteed no matter what happens moving forward. So I think that is a cornerstone in our portfolio that we like to provide to our clients as an option to help protect that from that type of risk.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go into retirement mm-hmm. with an idea that they just sort of have to get this number, right? And then somehow that's going to magically turn itself into income. So we have to keep getting growth in a lot of ways, because unless you're watching this and you've got $5 million in the bank, you're probably going to be looking at leveraging Social Security at some point. So at least that's guaranteed income that we can count on, at least for now. Right. I don't know what's going on after that. So you talked about inflation risk, which is the loss of purchasing power. So that's something that obviously we can't control over inflation, but then you have to address that in your risk management, right?
Correct, yeah. So when it comes to inflation risk, one of the first steps is to take an inventory of what your monthly expenses are now, and if you anticipate them to change during retirement. In some cases they can be higher, some cases lower, depending on what your hobbies might be. If you want to golf every day and have a country club membership and travel the world, mm-hmm. then your expenses may be higher in retirement. Mm-hmm. But if you plan to be a homebody and maybe volunteer locally in different areas, then your expenses can be lower. So the lower the expenses are, obviously that's going to help cushion mm-hmm. your retirement assets for the rest of those years. But with that being said, we see expenses continue to increase. Mm-hmm. Every year we see them increase at least 2.5–3% on average. And in some years, like 2022, where we saw massive inflation, it was tough for a lot of retirees. And so we help them address that and make sure that we monitor and maintain that by doing mm-hmm. a proper inventory of whatever those expenses look like now and out throughout retirement. Another major concern is healthcare expenses that could come up and unexpected situations with that. Rising costs of healthcare is another major concern. But overall, I think if we do a good job of taking proper inventory of those expenses and addressing them and making sure that we have that stream of income set for them to maintain their retirement portfolio balance, and they're able to just take the interest payments or the income payments from that and maintain that nest egg, that we're doing a great job for our clients.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about diversification, which is a word that obviously we use in financial planning and retirement planning. I think a lot of people have this naive idea that they're actually properly diversified. So when you see somebody who's getting ready to retire, they usually have a 401k, probably an IRA, they might have some other investments. They have some funds and ETFs, and when you look under the hood, they all have the same 7 stocks in them. And I guess, I'll call that naive diversification. So how do you help people understand that there are some things, I guess, that you can do to really help them, but they're not necessarily equities?
Right. So, and again, an investment for one person could be completely inappropriate for another. But that being said, it's still a lot of times, most of the time, makes sense to have 3 main asset classes that we like to work with. The first one, which I just mentioned, the guaranteed portion of your portfolio. Your sleep at night money. You know that it's going to be there no matter what happens. And then the other asset class or allocation we would consider would be alternatives, and investments that are an alternative to stocks, bonds, cash, and the guaranteed fixed index annuities. And those things can be things like preferred stock, real estate investments, oil and gas, equipment leasing funds. Those are all examples of alternative investments. And then the third asset class would be your traditional investments, stocks, bonds, and cash. And a lot of times what we can do is we can turn income on from each of those different asset classes into an income stream for the client when they need that income. If they don't need that income, we can take that income stream and reinvest it and grow those assets over time. So I think that, proper diversification is a critical component, but again, every investment might not be the best for each different investment profile.
So could you say that that's a short-term, mid-term, and long-term kind of a bucket strategy, where
Correct.
The long-term would be the risk stuff? You don't need this money for 10 years.
Right.
We can take on more risk as we have time to recover. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So time horizon is a very important component of that, of that planning process. And then liquidity. Do you have any major expenses that may be coming up aside from your monthly income? So you plan to put a new roof on the house, or buy a new car, or take a trip. Those types of things are all things that we take a close look at and address to make sure that we address that long-term income need, and then also potential need for liquidity if something arises.
I think we're in a situation too where policy risk is something that makes sense, and it usually revolves around taxes. And then the last thing is, when you're managing risk, there's that. Tax rates now, they're still on sale, but they're going up. That's a risk that you have to, I guess, address in planning. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so a lot of times if you have an accountant that you're working with, I'd like to be connected to them in some way or another, whether it's just kind of relaying information of tax planning strategies that are being utilized, or whether it's just helping make sure that we get all the proper documentation for that tax planning process. But with the different buckets of income sources, we also like to take money from if you have a major expense, we like to take that money from a non-qualified, meaning a non-retirement account, prior to taking it from an IRA, because any money you take out of an IRA is taxed at ordinary income, and that can possibly bump you up into a higher income tax bracket and have some significant tax consequences versus taking it from a different bucket, so to speak. So yeah, that is an absolutely critical strategy when it comes to planning for taxes.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Troy Tremblay with Tremblay Financial Services in Nashville. And this is Retirement News Online. Thank you for tuning in and watching.
Thank you.